At 3:27 a.m. on January 18, 2025, Robert Castellano stood beside a Corvin trunk shaker harvester in a Valencia orange grove near Lake Wales, Florida, watching the quality inspector's handheld refractometers show 10.2 bricks sugar content, while his processor contract with Tropicana required minimum 10.5 bricks for juice-grade acceptance. 59 years old, third-generation citrus grower, 640 acres under management producing 16,000 boxes annually. The weather forecast on his phone showed hard freeze arriving in 36 hours, temperatures dropping to 26 degrees that would damage fruit still on trees and force immediate harvest regardless of sugar levels. His processing contract included a $1.85 per box penalty for below-spec fruit, costing $29,600 if he delivered today's projected 16,000 boxes at current quality. Standard practice said, wait 3 more days for sugar to accumulate to acceptable levels before harvesting. His grove had already lost 40% of production to citrus greening disease over the past 5 years, and a freeze would destroy the remaining crop entirely. $122,400 in total revenue. Castellano signaled his crew. They'd harvest everything immediately, accept the quality penalty, and protect what fruit remained from freeze damage. Florida's orange harvest machine operates as America's dominant juice production system, 400,000 acres producing 46 million boxes annually, supplying 70% of U.S. orange juice through mechanical harvesting that runs October through June. Every day during peak season, trunk shaker harvesters vibrate trees at precise frequencies that release ripe fruit while leaving stems and branches intact. Catching frames collect falling oranges, and conveyor systems load fruit into bins transported immediately to 20-plus processing facilities operating 24/7. The plants extract juice, remove seeds and pulp, pasteurize, concentrate to reduce volume by 80%, and freeze concentrate for year-round distribution, completing the entire process within 24 hours of harvest to preserve volatile flavor compounds that deteriorate rapidly after picking. This is agriculture as industrial beverage manufacturing, where harvest timing affects sugar content, measured to decimal precision. Processing speed determines quality retention, and disease pressure threatens the industry's existence. Robert Castellano learned citrus farming from his father, who learned from his grandfather, and who planted Florida's first Valencia orange grove in 1952 when the state was transitioning from small fresh fruit operations to large-scale juice production. His grandfather had harvested oranges with crews of pickers using ladders and canvas bags, hand-selecting fruit for fresh market where appearance mattered. His father mechanized in 1978. Buying mechanical shakers that vibrated entire trees, accepting 8 to 12% fruit damage in exchange for harvesting 40 acres daily instead of 5 acres with hand labor. Castellano took over in 1994, expanded to 640 acres, and invested $1.8 million in modern harvest infrastructure, coordinating 4 trunk shaker systems, processing 120 acres weekly. But then, citrus greening arrived in 2005, a bacterial disease spread by psyllid insects that slowly killed trees and reduced yield 60 to 80% over a decade. His production had collapsed from 28,000 boxes annually to 16,000 boxes, while costs increased from disease management spray programs. The industry was dying. Every grower knew it. They harvested anyway. The Corvin 9120 trunk shaker Castellano operated cost $285,000 new in 2020. The machine weighed 18,000 pounds, used hydraulic clamps to grip tree trunks, and vibrated at 4.5 Hz for 8 to 12 seconds. A frequency and duration calibrated to shake oranges loose without damaging branches or leaving excessive fruit on trees. A catching frame extended around the tree like an inverted umbrella, collecting falling fruit and funneling it onto conveyor belts that elevated oranges into bulk bins. The entire process, drive to tree, clamp, shake, release, move to next tree, took 45 seconds per tree. At 110 trees per acre and 45 seconds each, and the machine processed 1 acre every 83 minutes. The technology was effective. The disease destroying the trees made the technology increasingly pointless as yields declined below economic viability. The economics were catastrophic, even before quality penalties. At processor contract rates of $8.20 per box, 90-pound field box, for juice-grade oranges, meeting minimum 10.5 bricks, each acre yielding 25 boxes generated $205 in gross revenue. But disease had reduced Castellano's yields to 25 boxes per acre versus the 400 boxes per acre his grandfather averaged in the 1960s. Seed costs for disease-resistant rootstock, $185 per acre for replanting programs trying to outrun greening. Fertilizer, $240 per acre. Infected trees required more nutrients to compensate for reduced root function. Pesticide sprays targeting psyllids, $420 per acre for 8 to 12 applications annually. Harvest costs, $68 per acre for mechanical equipment and labor. Processing and hauling, $42 per box paid to the processor. Total costs, $913 per acre against $205 revenue. Castellano was losing $708 per acre before accounting for land costs, equipment depreciation, or replanting investments. Across 640 acres, he lost $453,120 annually. The operation survived only through consuming equity built over 3 generations. It couldn't continue indefinitely. At 5:40 a.m., Castellano had harvested 32 acres, loading 800 boxes into trucks bound for Tropicana's processing plant in Bradenton, 90 miles away. The oranges looked acceptable, decent color, acceptable size. But the refractometer kept showing 10.1 to 10.3 bricks across samples. Below spec. The penalty would apply. His phone buzzed with a text from Tropicana's receiving coordinator. Heads up, we're backed up. Current wait time for unload is 4 to 6 hours. 4 to 6 hours meant fruit sitting in trucks, warming in ambient temperature, beginning respiration that consumed sugars and degraded juice quality further. The system was engineered for 24-hour harvest to processing. But when all growers harvested simultaneously ahead of freezes, the bottlenecks overwhelmed capacity. His son Michael arrived at 7:30 a.m. to help coordinate the multi-grove harvest operation. 32 years old, holding an agribusiness degree from University of Florida. He'd worked for a citrus management company before returning to help his father navigate the industry's terminal crisis. Michael had projected the economics for 5 years forward. At current disease progression rates, yields would drop to 15 boxes per acre by 2028. Revenue would fall to $123 per acre, and losses would exceed $900 per acre. The math didn't support continuing. Dad, even without the freeze and quality penalty, we're hemorrhaging money. We lost $450,000 last year. We'll lose $480,000 this year. I know the numbers. Then why are we still farming? Castellano didn't have a rational answer. 3 generations of family history wasn't rational. The land his grandfather cleared and planted wasn't about spreadsheet returns. But Michael was right. Sentiment didn't pay bills or service debt. By 2:30 p.m., the operation had harvested 140 acres and loaded 3,500 boxes. The bricks levels remained at 10.2 average, 0.3 below specification. The penalty calculation ran automatically. 3,500 boxes times $1.85 penalty equals $6,475 in deductions from his payment. And they still had 500 acres remaining to harvest before the freeze arrived tomorrow night. Tropicana called at 4:15 p.m. "Robert, we need to talk about your fruit quality. We're testing at 10.15 bricks average. That's below contract minimum. We're applying the penalty, but I need to warn you. If sugar levels drop below 10.0, we'll reject the load entirely." The freeze forced early harvest. I had no choice. I understand. But our contracts don't have weather exceptions. Quality specs are firm regardless of circumstances. This was Florida citrus in 2025. Growers forced to harvest early by freeze threats, processors rejecting below-spec fruit regardless of reasons, and economic losses accumulating until operations failed. And the system had no flexibility for the biological realities of fruit maturation interrupted by weather events. By January 20th, Castellano had completed the emergency harvest. Total production, 15,600 boxes at average 10.2 bricks. Revenue before penalties, $127,920 at $8.20 per box. Quality penalties, $28,860 for below-spec fruit. Net revenue, $99,060. Operating costs for the year, $584,320. Net loss, $485,260. His equity had absorbed another $500,000, keeping the operation running one more season. The freeze arrived January 19th at 11 p.m. as predicted. Temperatures dropped to 24 degrees. Castellano drove through his groves at 2 a.m., checking for ice damage on the small percentage of fruit still on trees despite harvest efforts, or the oranges left behind. Fruit the mechanical shakers couldn't release or that inspectors had rejected as too small were freezing solid. By morning, maybe 800 boxes worth of fruit would be complete losses. In a normal grove producing 400 boxes per acre. Losing 800 boxes meant 2% of production. In Castellano's diseased groves producing 25 boxes per acre, losing 800 boxes meant 5% of annual output, $6,560 in additional losses. Robert Castellano continued citrus farming through 2026, watching yields decline further to 22 boxes per acre as citrus greening advanced. Processing contracts dropped to $7.85 per box as oversupply from desperate growers flooding markets with below-quality fruit drove prices down. His losses exceeded $500,000 to $20,000 for the year. In spring 2027, his bank informed him they would not renew his agricultural operating loan without significant collateral additions. He met with Michael in April 2027 to discuss succession. Michael had no interest in inheriting losses. He'd found a position with a citrus management company earning $78,000 annually managing other people's groves until those operations also failed. The family farming would end with Robert's generation. "Dad, you need to sell before the equity is completely gone. Who's buying citrus groves in Florida? The industry is collapsing. Developers. They're paying $12,000 per acre for grove land to convert to residential. That's $7.68 million for 640 acres. Castellano did the math. After settling $3.2 million in debt, he'd net $4.48 million. Enough to retire comfortably, not enough to feel like 3 generations of work had meant anything. He accepted a developer's offer in August 2027. The contract included provisions allowing him to complete one final harvest season before the groves were cleared for housing construction. He harvested his last crop October 2027 through February 2028, 12,400 boxes at rapidly declining quality as trees deteriorated. Revenue, $97,280. Costs, $598,400. Final year loss, $501,120. The operation had ended as it had functioned for the past decade. Losing money while producing fruit nobody needed in quantities that didn't justify the infrastructure. Florida's citrus industry continues contracting. From 800,000 acres in 2000 to 400,000 acres in 2024, to projected 250,000 acres by 2030. As citrus greening destroys trees faster than replanting can replace them, orange juice consumption has declined 40% since 2000 as consumers shift to other beverages. Processing facilities operate at 60% capacity, consolidating operations and reducing producer contracts. The mechanical harvesters keep shaking trees. The processors keep extracting juice. The system functions at diminishing scale. The families exit into residential developments built on land that once supplied America's breakfast tables. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Your support helps us preserve these histories of American agriculture's transformation. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and whether you understand the disease pressures destroying Florida's citrus industry. Thank you for keeping their stories alive.